All right, we're here. Welcome to episode 33 of Versus Mike History. I'm your host, Michael History. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you choose to listen. And if we are on your preferred platform, let us know and we'll do our best to change that. You can stay up to date on Versus Mike History by signing up for our newsletter and find any further information at versusmikehistory.com.
Oh, you know about that? Tell me what you know about that. Tell me what you think about that.
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
Nigga, did you just say what I was trying to say, but smarter?
The Louis back to match the Benz. I'm doing anything. Carbon fiber frame on the bike cost 5 G's. Don't check me, little nigga, check your hygiene. 2015 trips to the Philippines. When I touched my first $1 million, didn't announce that. On the phone with Herman Miller asking where the couch at. Why these niggas always got my name with a mouth at? Passing through Vacaville, took it to the outlet. Love, you gotta work your way up to get that real bag. Mackin' on the bitch, white tee in the hydro flash. Duffel bag with the name tag filled with hella cash. 100 grand on blue, sliding up mill. House in Atlanta, bought that nigga all cash. Tax write-off for you niggas that don't understand. I be out the way.
Yo, what's good, family? We back again. Back since, I don't know what I'm saying, but we back. I took off last week because I took a little vacation. I took my talents to Seattle for the weekend. I decided to get out of Jersey and see the world for a little bit just because I needed to get away for a bit, clear my mind. And, I was supposed to go somewhere for my birthday and I didn't do that. And that was the sum of what inspired my trip to Seattle. And I'll get into that a little bit later on the episode, but we got some shit to get into before that. All right, as always, we're going to lead with love. I only got a couple shout outs. I'm going to give a shout out to Beatrice for the lovely stay. Thank you for that in Seattle. Well, I'll get into that in a few. I want to give a shout out to the owner of Pedal Anywhere for giving me transportation during my trip in Seattle as well. Seattle is a big biking city, so it's really important that I had a means of transportation while I was out there because I didn't want to rent a car or anything, and it wasn't necessary at all. And I want to give a shout out to the Reef and the Pot Shop, 2 dispensaries out in Seattle who hooked me up for my stay and showed me what was the fire out there. So shout out to you guys. And yeah, so let's get into our topics for the episode. I'm leading with Black Excellence this week. I want to start with congratulating Killer Mike on launching his Black-owned bank that's called Greenwood. It's an online banking account that Black folks can use to keep the money circulating within our own community. And in the first 24 hours of its launch, it has received tens of thousands of requests. So shout out to Killer Mike doing the work of the people. I've been dealing with banks as of recently for a couple weeks, just opening business bank accounts and trying to get my business credit right and stuff like that. And I've been trying to but I've been trying to keep the money within the community, which by that I mean I've been trying to bank Black. And this hasn't been an issue at all. It's just about convenience and what the type of fees that come with these accounts, because at the end of the day, banking is still banking. It can still be very predatory, but when you're dealing with people within your own community, it lessens the risk that you are going to be put in a position where you're going to be cheated out of your money by the institution. So yeah, I suggest everyone to bank Black. If you're opening a business account for your Black business, go to a Black bank. because they'll probably be more friendly or more helpful for your business. And yeah, doing that, like I said before, keeps the money within the community. And we need a lot of that. We damn sure need a lot of that. But moving on, we're going to get into some new music. So I had the luxury of listening to a ton of new music while I was in Seattle because my trip started on Friday. The last Friday, not this past Friday. And it was great. My soundtrack for the trip was great. You know, we got a new Benny the Butcher single. We got Westside Gunn's new album. We got Trey Songz album. We got what else did we get? We got I didn't talk about Anniversary since the Bryson episode, but that dropped as well, and that was in rotation a lot. And I think that Savage Mode 2 dropped, and Giveon dropped an EP. So it's safe to say that my weekend definitely had an ill soundtrack. All those projects sound great, by the way. I guess I'll start with Westside Gunn's album, because that's probably what I spun the most. So Westside Gunn released his debut album, and it is called Who Made the Sunshine, released on Griselda Records, of course. That album is fire. These Griselda guys, I feel like I'm a talking box repeating myself over and over and over again, but these Griselda guys are just built different. Like, they have molded the industry to their liking. They're getting to the point where they can work with the mainstream artists that they choose, which include veterans, might I add, who give them the utmost respect. And I think that's very admirable, especially for newer acts in music. And they stay true to the boom bap sound, which I love. And you know, it's not necessarily, even though it may feel like biting to some or an homage to others, I think that they keep their sound pretty original. They use original producers for their albums. Shout out to Derringer. And shout out to the other Griselda producers. I just can't, you guys' names aren't at the top of my head right now, but shout out to you guys. And this whole ecosystem of artists within Griselda, meaning Conway, Westside Gunn, Benny the Butcher, Boldy James, Armani Caesar, there's somebody else that I'm thinking of that I can't even, whose name isn't coming to my mind right now. But yeah, these guys are immaculate. But let me get back to the album. I think my favorite cut off the album is going to be Ocean Prime, and that's featuring Rick Ross and Busta Rhymes. Anything Busta Rhymes related is pretty much a guaranteed success with me, because I love Busta Rhymes and I feel like he's overlooked. I also love Ishka Bibbles, featuring Black Thought, because Black Thought is a wordsmith and a lyrical god. And I'll say it again because it's the truth. And I like The Butcher and the Blade, which is the second track on the album. And that's Westside Gunn, Benny the Butcher, and Conway, the big three from Griselda. And you know, shout out to Stove God Cooks. That's who I was thinking of earlier. But yeah, man, like, the album is really well put together. Their sound is advancing and growing by the moment, and these guys are just incomparable in terms of their ability to put words on a paper and put that to a track. So shout out to Westside Gunn, and we're gonna get into the Benny the Butcher. Now, Benny's album I heard before the Seattle trip because it actually leaked on Twitter, and Benny is my favorite from Griselda, to be perfectly honest. I feel like they are consistently going neck and neck, and by they, I'm talking about Gunn, Conway, and Butcher. But I feel like these guys are always going neck and neck in terms of who lyrically can be the best out of their crew. But for me personally, it's always been Benny. So he released his single, and the name of it is What? I'm sorry, y'all. I should have had this pulled up. But it just released, and it's called Timeless. It features Lil Wayne, and I heard Benny's verse and I heard Wayne's verse before the song was actually released on Twitter. But the version that was actually put out onto digital streaming platforms was actually also featuring Big Sean. So out of the three of them, I definitely think that Benny had the best verse, which doesn't take away from anybody else's, because Wayne was definitely a close second, and Big Sean's verse wasn't ass either. It's just that I don't know. You hear that first leak, and then you kind of get the verse burned into your head, and you kind of already make the decision up about the song sometimes. And by the time I heard Big Sean's verse, not to say it was ass, it was just that like Benny just opens the track so viciously that I don't know, you kind of just can't really take nothing away from that, even when you add on to the verses, and unless somebody ain't coming to play. But the song Timeless is a great way to showcase how the album that we'll be getting from Benny in this upcoming week, I believe. And the album is produced exclusively by Hit Boy. And I think that's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, the other artists within the Griselda camp haven't chosen to make a decision such as this, but they clearly have the star power to reach out to and work with the artists that they choose. Well, not the artists, the producers that they choose to. And it just shows the progression of their talent. And I think that moving forward, we'll see a lot more Griselda, we'll hear a lot more Griselda music with high caliber producers. Moving on to Trey's album though, that actually released this past week, and I didn't have a chance to listen to it while I was in Seattle, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was actually anticipating it for a while because I saw that Trey Songz had started the process of rolling out a project earlier this year when he released that song Shooting Shots that had Tory Lanez and Ty Dolla $ign on it, and I really like that song, and it made a couple playlists that I created, but for myself, not for you guys. But that song actually didn't end up making the album. I don't know if it was for that other situation with Tory or not, but probably it probably comes down to when that song was released, just because it came out so far from the actual projected, not projected, but from the actual release of the album. And when they released that single, it was probably projected to release way earlier, because I see that Atlantic is kind of dropping off albums that they have had in a tuck for a while. And that's one of the interesting things about this pandemic and everything, just to go off on a tangent really quickly, is just that we know that artists are working all year round, and it's interesting to see these labels hold back their artists from releasing anything just to try to recoup the money that they were supposed to make back for the year, and end up putting them all out at the same time towards the end of the year. So essentially thrusting us back into the type of release schedule that we were used to before COVID. So really nothing changed about music releases throughout COVID. It just changed. I think what changed mostly is how artists approach getting the bags aside from their music bag. But yeah, Trey Songz album was good, really good. It's called Back Home. Go listen to it. And Giveon's album is definitely one that I had the chance to listen to while I was in Seattle. This guy he don't miss. And yes, his projects are considerably short, but when you go in 3 for 3 on your EP, there's not much to complain about, you know what I mean? Because there's been plenty of artists who release EPs and 4, 5, 6 track EPs, and then you got 1 or 2 songs that don't necessarily hit like that. And for me personally, it's like, why even release an EP? You can just release a single and ride that out, and then release another single and then ride that out, and yada yada yada, until you get up to the point where you feel comfortable enough releasing a project. But to snap back, Giveon's project, which is called, drumroll please, because I can't find the name of it. It's called When It's All Said and Done. And one of my favorite tracks from this project, I'm gonna play a clip of, is his collaboration with the lovely Snow Allegra, because I love Snow, you know what I mean? And I don't listen to a ton of white artists, not discriminate or anything, not that I have to explain that, but I just don't listen to white artists like that. And Snow is one of the few that I enjoy thoroughly. So, and I especially like listening to R&B, so that's probably why. But yeah, Snow is one of the few exceptions within our culture who gets to dabble with our artists. And I think that the song that she has with Giveon is really dope. So I'm just gonna play a little bit of it.
Come over. I know I should know you shouldn't. Come over.
You can't hate that voice.
Back into your arms again, and we say it's getting
How
on.
can you hate that voice either?
Saying that I love you just so you don't let me go. It ain't right, but I'ma stay tonight because you told me so. Every time we try, it's back and forth.
And I'm definitely working on it.
It's like that. I swear I come right back. I want you just like that. Don't fight back. Baby, don't get like that. I swear I just might
Bringing it into the hook.
gone by tonight. Just this last time. Don't make me regret it. I don't wanna say it. Let's not overthink it, baby. Just this last time. Don't make me regret it. I don't wanna say it. Let's not overthink it, baby. Come over.
Ooh, yeah. I don't want to give y'all too much, but yeah, man, like those two are phenomenal, and I'm already waiting for the Snow album. Dying for Your Love is not too much of my speed, but I don't hate the song at all. I actually do like it. It's just that I prefer more of, I don't even know what I could say to make it make sense, but that speed or tempo of song, even though she produces mostly slow music like that, just wasn't for me. So I'm waiting to hear the rest of the Snow album. Giveon, I am excited to see what type of artists and producers that he chooses to work with for his debut album. That guy is really talented and kind of seemingly just came out of nowhere. And I don't like really saying that about artists because, you know, artists work really hard behind the scenes to get to the point that they are at. But I literally didn't hear about him until I found out that he was sampled on that Drake single that released earlier this year, the Chicago Freestyle. And seemingly he released his project shortly after that song was released. And it did him super justice. And I love to see stuff come together like that. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Giveon's album, or Giveon's EP rather. So go ahead and check that out. It's nice late night vibes. So just know what you're getting into. Or if you just an R&B connoisseur like me, listen to it whenever, because, you know, niggas be in their feelings. And I guess I'll end with Ari Lennox, the lovely Ari Lennox. Hey Ari. She released her single Chocolate Pomegranate, which I would assume is going to be on an upcoming album. I saw her tweeting about it a little bit as well. Her soulful sound doesn't get old to me. And I think that while her audience highly appreciated her debut album, it didn't get the critical response that it deserved. So seeing that she is working on her craft and reaching new heights and staying the talented woman that she is great to me, because we need more artists like Ari Lennox, man, who care about vocals, who care about the artists of the past and emulating them and making sure that the legacy that they left behind is sort of emulated within our future. And Ari Lennox, without a doubt, I would consider a soul artist because she sings from the soul. And, you know, I really connect with her music. And I don't think that can be said about a lot of other R&B artists that currently occupy our space. Like, personally, and this is just a personal opinion, and I don't want to sit here and dog people because that's not what this podcast is for by any means. But I'm just not, and not to say I didn't like the song or I can't listen to it when it comes on, but it's something about that new LMA single that just doesn't hit with me. It seems like the concept of the song and the production don't really mesh well. I don't really want to harp on it for too long, but me personally, I'm not feeling it too much. LMA is a fantastic artist, a great singer, so shout out to her at the end of the day. But I don't know, man. And I think that's where I leave off music because I got a good amount of television to get into. So, yeah. Okay, so I got a good amount of TV to get into, actually. Contrary to how I usually come on the episode. But, yeah, so let's get started. I have been watching Girlfriends on Netflix for a couple weeks now. I didn't really get into it immediately when everybody else got into it, just because I don't like... while I like watching things with the timeline, series gets shaky because some people can literally just sit in their room and watch a show for hours and they'll be talking about season 2 and season 4 and season 6 all in the same day. And I'm still on the second season. So, shout out to Mara Barakakil for creating this fantastic show and for all the tidbits and things that you shared about this series since it has been put back on Netflix. It's such a fantastically written comedy. I hope that people give it the attention that it deserves because the show was ahead of its time, to be completely honest. It touched on topics that are definitely taboo now as a black community, and were taboo definitely when that show came out, which is the super early 2000s. And by early 2000s, I mean before 2010 for the youngins out there. But yeah, Girlfriends is fantastic. I'm loving the connection between these women and the dynamic relationships that they've been able to develop while working together on this series, and they mesh together so well that there's very little to say critically about the series, and it doesn't pander to white people, which is what I love about the series. It doesn't pander to white people in the slightest, not like how newer shows do, or how newer shows sort of are like, oh, I'm black in a white space. It doesn't really do that. I mean, Joan has those issues within her law firm, but that isn't like the central identity of the show, where it's like, these are black people operating white spaces. Or no, it's like, this is a small bubble of friends who are unapologetically black and come from different walks of life, because Lynn is mixed, Maya works for Joan, William is a Republican, Tony is superficial, and yeah, man, like and Joan is Joan, like she's insufferable with men. That's just my personal opinion, but she is a 29-year-old junior partner at a law firm. Like, all of these people have accomplished great things. Lynn has 5 college degrees, and I won't get into it. I won't stay on it for too long, but Girlfriends is phenomenal, and it wasn't appreciated by the networks nearly as much as it should have been, because black art doesn't get appreciated, it just gets consumed. But moving on to Class Action Park. So I watched a documentary on HBO Max that was stealing my attention for a while because I saw advertisements about it, and I didn't take the time out to watch it until I had some free time on my hand. And that was Class Action Park. And this documentary is about a water park in New Jersey from the 70s that was basically ruleless. I want to say that I'm gonna look up the name. First of all, the name of the actual park is called Action Park. It's quite interesting to see like documents and stuff about it, because I didn't hear about that at all when I was a kid growing up. And not to say I should have, because I didn't grow up in the 70s. I grew up I was born in the 90s. But still, to have something in your backyard like that and not hear about it until you're almost 30 years old is pretty wild. So yeah, Action Park was opened in the 70s in Vernon Township, New Jersey. And this was basically by some nutty white man who, eccentric. And there's always some eccentric, crazy white man behind these types of ideas. But essentially it was, Action Park was this water park that didn't really have any rules. Like, how you go to a water park like Six Flags or Dorney Park, and they say like, oh, well, you got to wait until the person's a little bit further down on like the lazy river or something like that, so you don't run into them, or like you can't run on the concrete, or like there's consistent overwatch of who is in the wave pool. None of these things existed at Action Park. It was essentially a summer water park that was ran by children. If you stayed there for more than a couple of years, you would move up into some executive role, or they would give you some executive role. I don't know about how the pay was. They didn't really speak about that too much. But yeah, it was just an ecosystem of danger. Like, people would go there and get bruised up, break limbs. I think 5 people died at that park over the course of 10 years, which is insane. This is a non-franchised theme park in New Jersey. And I know that the 70s was a wild time, but like, I don't know, whatever. And this is also mostly like a white thing. I watched this documentary and I actively looked for the black people in the documentary, and I saw none. So this is probably just a case of one of those situations where earlier in the history of our state where, people were more racist, obviously, because of the time that it was, and black people didn't get to enjoy the things that everybody else did. But there's definitely like a whole ecosystem of people that exist who know about this park and that went to this park and experienced it and even worked there, that give you full in-depth information about the things that are going on. And the rides at this park were crazy. Like, there's literally a looped tube slide at this park where you literally sitting in a dark tube that's filled with water, so you slide down and then you go into a loop all in the dark. Like, and then they were talking about how people's teeth were getting sucked out of not sucked out of their mouth, but people's teeth were getting stuck at the top of the loop because they would go up the loop so quickly and hit their faces, and people would come out with broken noses and bloody faces and things like that. But I don't want to ruin the film because it actually really is good, and it's really insightful in terms of how no oversight can cause super damage in people's personal lives and families, and in terms of business, and how money is essentially what makes the world go round, because even after a certain point, people knew that this park was very dangerous, and because of the money that it brought to the economy, the surrounding economy, politicians would just allow it to keep to stay open and running, even though people were dying at this park. Like 2 people died in the wave pool. That is insane. But when the founder of this park died, which was in just this past decade in 2012, Chris Christie, who was governor at the time, spoke about how his enormous contribution to the economy and yada yada yada. So no matter how despicable you are, as if you're pumping money into the community, then your government officials will show you love when you pass away. And I think that I'll end that segment on that note. But yeah, go watch Class Action Park on HBO Max because it actually was pretty good. Now, getting into The Boys, which is on Amazon Prime. I just wrapped up the final episode of The Boys earlier before recording this episode, and man, I know a lot of people of color especially don't like this show. There are a lot of things about this show that I could understand that people don't like, or wouldn't like want to tack on to. So I'll start there. The Boys is a series on Amazon Prime that's basically like, what if superheroes were celebrities that were like ain't shit, basically, that just did whatever they wanted and got away with it because they all worked for a super mega conglomerate that had billions of dollars to spend on good PR for their product. And that's basically how it runs. That's basically the underlying premise to the series, and it is thoroughly entertaining, and I think that the production quality is exactly where it needs to be to tell a story like this. But the thing about the show that I could see a lot of people not liking is the trope of like the evil superhero. So it's like not even the super villain, but the evil superhero. So like the guy who saves the world but isn't a good person. And I think that we're getting to this place in superhero content in terms of television and film where we're trying to divert the expectations of the audience by trying new ideas. And this was definitely something that I feel like is necessary within the culture of superhero films and television. However, I think that as the series goes on, you kind of have to shift towards different ideas because it starts to get a little old by the end of the second season, and it doesn't necessarily take away from the plot or the writing or the acting. However, I can acknowledge something, especially when I go and read other reviews from other people and they speak about these things, because you put it into perspective. But like I said before, the quality of the series is fantastic. I think that everybody does what they need to do in terms of production, acting, and writing. I think that this season specifically, in terms of what they deal with in terms of race and stuff like that, is they go a little off the rails in terms of how they want the character of Stormfront to be portrayed, because it's based off of a superhero that's quite literally a Nazi in the comics. And that's another thing about the series, is that it's far better. A lot of people have said that it's far better than the comics, which is kind of more shock value than critical commentary through the lens of fantasy and science fiction. And we focus on this character Stormfront, who gets changed for the series, not in the fact that she's not a Nazi, because she is, but that's revealed. Spoiler alert. Sorry guys. But I think that what's most important about her character is that it reflects the times that we are in, and I think that's very poignant, especially seeing that there's no way that these guys could have known how this year was going to go when they were filming this. So the fact that it was released and they're kind of like right on the nose in terms of the type of stuff we're living with in 2020 and everything like that is very interesting. And I'm very curious to see how this series evolves in the future. We're going to go ahead and wrap up television with Lovecraft Country. So if you guys have been listening to the series, you know that I really wasn't gonna watch this show from weekly. I wasn't gonna watch the show weekly with everyone else, just because it didn't seem like a premise that necessarily enticed me too much. I don't like the realm of magic and everything like that. Not to say that it can't be done properly, but it just isn't my thing. But I do feel the obligation to support Black media and Black content within the entertainment industry, especially since we ain't getting too much else from anywhere else. So why pass up on a Black show, on a Black show, right? But I did end up getting into it. I did end up catching up and watching it weekly with the rest of social media, and the series finale you will have watched now if you're listening to this, most likely, but because it airs when I'm recording, the day I'm recording this, but this show is really good. Like, I have a lot of things to say about it in terms of how linear the storyline is, because it isn't really that by any means, but it doesn't take away from the quality of the show. You would think that by how all over the place this series is, or this first season has been, it would take away from the overall message of the show, and it hasn't done that at all. And I really admire what it's done up to this point. I'm curious to see how the series will end, how the season will end this year, because of how much it jumps around. But the show is fantastic. It's well written. It always manages to sneak in a lesson about Black consciousness and about Black culture, and ties it in with such a modern twist. And I love the show for that. And it's more science fiction than simply magic based. I don't want to keep it confined to a box, but this show is really good, so if you haven't seen it yet, give it a shot. It's wrapping up today, so you'll be able to watch it all the way through. And I think that it's at least worth at least one watch. I'm curious to know what's next for HBO in terms of Black shows, but that's for another time. And that's pretty much it on Lovecraft Country. And that's when I said I was done, but I actually do want to talk about one more show that I just started watching, which is Fargo on Hulu. Because when I was in Seattle, I watched the original film Fargo, which was fantastic. And I love when I end up choosing to watch something that is highly regarded on my own time, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So I decided to watch the series Fargo based off of how I felt about the film. And I know that Chris Rock is in the current season of the show, so I was like, why not? So it's an anthology crime series based off the premise of the movie. Not that is directly tied, not that they are directly tied to each other, but they definitely are related. And I think that people should check it out because it's pretty good. And I like crime, drama, mystery, up that alley. And yeah, I'm curious to see how, I'm still on the first season, by the way, but I'm curious to see how everything is going to turn out within this first season. So, all right, y'all, and we just going to wrap up with my trip to Seattle, which I didn't think that I'd be still recording at this time, but, whatever. So Seattle was amazing, and the reason that I decided to go there, as opposed to anywhere else or somewhere warm or anything like that, was because, well, first and foremost, I wanted to go somewhere that wasn't on the restricted list that Phil Murphy, our governor, the New Jersey governor, released about a month or so ago before I booked the trip. And Washington wasn't on the restricted list in terms of states that you would have to quarantine when you got back. So that played a part into my decision, in addition to where marijuana was legal. And because initially I was gonna make the decision to go to Denver, but in Portland was on one of the states that I was deciding whether to go to, or one of the cities, that I was deciding to go to. And I ended up on Portland. I ended up on Seattle, It just made the most sense. So I took my flight credit and I found a cheap Airbnb. And I took my ass to Washington and took myself across the country to go hang out for a weekend. And I couldn't have had a better trip, to be honest. I think that the only thing that would have made my trip better than it actually was if I was able to go to a Seahawks game. That's pretty much it. And Seahawks they don't have any audiences for their games in the league right now, so it wouldn't have been possible regardless. The food was really good, I'll say. I had the first day I was there, I had some steak tacos across from the Reef, the first dispensary that I chose to go to. The steak tacos were amazing. I forget the name of the shop though, but if you are from Seattle and you know where the Reef is, you know where that taco shop is. Later that night, I believe that, what did I eat later that day? I think that, I know what I did. Oh, no, that was a Saturday, excuse me. But yeah, I didn't eat much the first day because I got there like in the afternoon and stuff like that. So I had those tacos and then I forget what I ate later that night. Saturday, I got up pretty earlier than I expected to get up, and I bought a bunch of bud. That's first and foremost. So I had to figure out how I was gonna pace myself in terms of like eating the edibles and smoking the pre-rolls and rolling up all the bud that I was buying and stuff like that. And I basically spent all Saturday just smoking. So just to run it back really quickly to Friday, the first day, I went to the Reef, like I said, and I copped an eighth and some edibles. I ate about 5 of the edibles because they were like these sour gummy candies that were like 10 milligram a pop, and they came in like a pack of 10. And it was really good, and I was high. And the blunts that I rolled were definitely sufficed for the trip. Now going back to Saturday, I went to the pot shop, and I copped a couple pre-rolls. I copped some Granddaddy Perp and some Critical Kush, and some Durban Poison, and some Donny Boy. Donny Boy was a indica dominant hybrid. And the first day, on Friday, I copped some icicles, which was a mix between white sherbet and jet fuel something. I forget. Maybe it's just jet. I forget. And yeah. So Saturday, I basically just spent the day smoking the pre-rolls that I had because the Granddaddy Perp came in 2 1-gram pre-rolls, as did the Critical Kush, and the Durban Poison joint that I had was a whopping 2 grams. So I was pretty high the whole day Saturday, and Saturday is probably one of my, I can't say that it was the best day, but it was definitely a great day because I went and tried Pike Place's famous chowder, which was amazing. I also had one of their lobster rolls, which was fantastic. I rode around the city on my bike as I did on Friday, and I ended up going back to the B&B a little bit early just because I was so high from like trying to keep up in terms of the schedule of how I was gonna pace out eating these edibles and smoking his bud and shit like that. So I went back to my B&B, I fell asleep, and I woke up later that night and from a weed coma, and I basically just smoked the rest of my pre-rolls, including that 2-gram Durban Poison joint, which pretty much put me out to sleep, put me out for the rest of that night. And then Sunday, Sunday was the day. Oh, and on Saturday I went to the Museum of Pop Culture, which, excuse me, hang on. Which wasn't all that eventful. I'm not gonna lie. It looks good, but and they have a really good Jimi Hendrix exhibit. But all in all, it wasn't probably worth the $27 that I paid to get in. But regardless of the fact, I still enjoyed the experience. I probably just would never go again. And Sunday, I linked with one of my frat brothers. Shout out to Sasha. I should have shouted you out in the beginning of the episode. But shout out to Sasha and JL for giving me a tour of the Space Needle and the revolving floor within the Space Needle. The view was amazing from the top of that thing. I learned a lot about the structure, like the fact that it was only built in the 60s, so it hasn't even been around for that long. And, you know, just seeing where the B&B was from where I wasn't at the Space Needle, I could see the house like straightforward from there. And, you know, you can see a lot from that high up in the sky. So it was a really incredible experience being that high up and being able to tour that monument. And it was a great experience. Later that day, we went through this garden. I forget the name of it. That was also connected to the. No, never mind. Excuse me. I was gonna say it's connected to the Space Needle, but it wasn't. But I went to this garden where I saw a bunch of art, and it was really cool. And it was connected to the Seattle Art Museum, but I didn't get to go to the actual museum. And later after that, we went to the Bar where I had some amazing Japanese. Not Japanese, excuse me. I believe it was Vietnamese pho. I had some oxtail pho. It was out of this world, man. Like, fantastic. I can't even really get into how good it was, for real. But overall, the trip was fantastic. I tell you about this trip just to tell you that if you have any reservations about taking a trip on your own or traveling and stuff like that, man, just go for it. Like, the times that we're living in, you don't really know what's going to be thrown at us next. So you should go ahead and try to cross off the things on your list as soon as you can and live that life that you've been trying to live, but also do it responsibly. You know what I mean? I think that we have an obligation to make ourselves happy, but we also have an obligation to be responsible. So it's about balancing that out and finding that balance in life. And I think that moving forward, I'll be doing more solo trips just because, not to say that I don't want to travel with anyone, but I think that I can still find the ability to completely enjoy myself without the need of having someone with me. And that's a pretty phenomenal thing once you realize that about yourself. And not everyone's like that. And I think that's pretty much it. You know, like, it was a really eye-opening experience, and it also opened my eyes to the types of content that I want to bring to the podcast. One more thing in terms of food, I went to Fats Chicken and Waffles. Shout out to Fats Chicken and Waffles in Seattle. They're a black-owned business, and I had their chicken and waffles, and I had their shrimp and grits, which were fantastic. So shout out to you guys. And yeah, you know, I just wanted to talk about that with you guys because I want you guys to know that there's shit out there for us to experience in the world. And yeah. And if you guys aren't able to experience it, then if you check in here, you'll be able to experience it vicariously through me. And I think that that's where I'll wrap up the episode for today. So as always, send topics, questions, music, and movie suggestions. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at VS Mike History and on Instagram at Versus Mike History. And you can follow me, your boy, at Mike History on Twitter and Last Name History on Instagram. I will see you guys next week.